Thanks, Mari. So my name is Matt Aliberti. I am the Director of Foundations and Grants at United Way Worldwide. I'm based in Alexandria, Virginia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. There's a hurricane blowing right through us today. And I've been here for about 5 years. Previously, I worked on our program team or our impact team, where I supported United Ways that are using or implementing or supporting collective impact work. So I've moved into this new role where I help us connect with foundations and embrace that role that we have. And so I was thrilled for the opportunity to talk about collective impact to a foundation friend and friends in Finland today. So United Way, we wear many hats, and that makes collective impact a natural strategy for local United Ways. As a very quick background, United Way is a network of roughly 1,800 independent nonprofit organizations across the US and in over 40 countries. We do not have a partner in Finland, but there are several European countries where we have offices. We were started 132 years ago in the US, and our model is based on local relationships and global partnerships. Together, we raise $4.8 billion US dollars annually from 8 million donors, and we engage 2.9 million volunteers. So we have a big global scale, but we're really based and focused locally, where we raise money in each local community to address local issues related to education, income, and health. And we have strong relationships with companies and corporations, but we also partner with local government and NGOs. And so that gives us a natural role of bringing together different sectors to address community issues. So we serve as connectors. We don't really provide direct services. We bring people together to do that. And as funders, we know all the local NGOs that provide those services. And we've learned to focus on impact and use common metrics that enable shared measurement and common measurement across the local network and our global network. So we continue to foster collaboration as we go, which just made it a natural role for us. As fundraisers, we have to communicate results in order to get more resources. And as a neutral convener, we can bring together government and companies and volunteers. So we've really been doing collective impact for a long time, before the Stanford Social Innovation Review article came out. But collective impact can be very formal with specific roles and titles and structures, or it can be a little more organic and flexible. And we've taken both approaches to it, and are trying to use it more and more in order to address bigger social issues and get to deeper impact. Our transition started around 15 years ago. We moved to impact, which I guess would be more towards social impact. Before that, we were known for raising money and giving money out, particularly in the US. We would raise money from all the local donors and then give the money out to all the local charities. And that's very easy to do, and everyone's happy because everyone gets a little bit of money. But here, I don't know if you use the same term, we call it spreading the peanut butter, where we have the money and we just give it out a little bit to everybody. And it doesn't really get any deep impact. We moved to the new metaphor we use is trying to move the needle. Like when you're inflating a bicycle tire, we'd be asking all these people for money and giving all this money out, but were we really making an impact? Like when you're pumping the bike tire, but is that needle moving up, or are you just kind of burning yourself out? And we keep asking ourselves, are we moving that needle for whatever issue we're focusing on? And that's what we used to focus each local United Way. And I work at the headquarters office, and we support all the locals. We help them focus on, rather than spread your money everywhere, focus on a few issues and focus the money there. And generally, it's education, income, and health. And United Way's make grants in that area now, in those areas, and then that got them started thinking about what outputs to measure, what outcomes to measure, and how to keep aligning their grant making to drive that impact. But that's not collective impact. That would go much further, and it requires United Ways to not just think of themselves as funders, but working with partners to set a bigger goal, a big community goal, and build the partnerships and change the systems to reach that goal. And that's a challenge to make that transition, because they had the skills and the staff to make grants, but you need different staff and different skills to work with different partners and have different roles to focus on that bigger goal. So that's the change, and it keeps happening across our network. Social impact bonds can be a very powerful model. The concept is beautiful, but the implementation I've seen here in the US can be complex. If you reduce the impact of a social issue, you save society money, and private funders pay up front for that model based on prior results, so they're confident it'll happen. And as the results are evaluated and the impact gets measured, the government saves the money and repays the investors. Where I've seen United Ways implement the model in the US, it takes, the investors are very strict bankers, and it takes years of evidence for them to be confident that it'll happen. And then it takes years of working with them so that they get their money back. And it has worked well in those cases, but you need that body of evidence to work. And so where you're in an earlier stage of collective impact or need more flexibility, other funding sources may be more helpful. And that, we've seen it come from many different sources. Foundations are a primary source, both local foundations and national or global foundations. They can be good funders for both systems change or capacity building, and as well as whatever the issue is that you're focusing on. Government, especially local, but also national, is a good partner, especially on the programmatic side for funding. United Ways are sort of like a community funder. So there may be other models in different communities where you raise funds from local funders, donors, to support programs in different capacities. Corporate funders are a big potential source of revenue, both local and global. A lot of times the funding comes from the corporate social responsibility budget, but I can talk more about different ways they can get involved. And then funder collaboratives are a way we've seen that gets more than one funder to the table and helps them think through different roles that their funding can take. So social impact bonds, I talked about how complex they are, but they can bring in a lot of money and hopefully have a predictable funding stream. If it's a 5-year contract to increase reading rates, then you know you have that partner with you for 5 years. They can build things around that. So that's a great strength of that model. Foundations can be very catalytic especially at the early stage where you need funding and thought partners and sort of clout behind you. And they have a more unique intellectual focus that they may be more interested in systems and backbone roles than other funders may be. So in addition to whatever expertise they have in the focus area, they could be great experts and partners with their funding and just with their connections. Government funding can bring in both major funds, but also political support. And I did a little research to clarify an anecdote I had in my head that in 2019, overall foundation giving from all foundations was around $75 billion. In contrast, the annual city budget for New York City alone was $86 billion. So one city budget, a big city, but one city budget has more money in it than all of the foundations in the world. So it may not be easy, but getting that government funding aligned with your initiative will bring in tremendous amounts of money for the program and the work you're trying to do. It may be very restricted funding, but it can keep more of the players aligned in the local work. Community fundraising, like United Ways, can be very sustainable because it's driven by results and local stories, compelling more and more people to give, and it kind of diversifies your funding. The corporate funding can be very powerful and brings different sectors. Companies are used to results, especially in the US. They're used to quarterly income and revenue. So that could be a challenge sometimes if your initiative is kind of slower moving and taking time to show the impact. But if you can convey that result that you're getting, you can bring in money from companies that want to invest in their local communities, but also volunteers and even program participants. Like if it's a workforce initiative, you can bring employers to the initiative to participate and hopefully hire participants. And then a funder collaborative, it builds trust amongst the funders. They pool their funds, and then the group kind of makes a funding decision. So one funder may be afraid to fund too deep into a program or into a backbone. But if they fund the pool and the pool funds the backbone, then the risk is off of them. So that's a good way to build trust as you're bringing in new funders. So these are the most common I see. And generally you want more than one, so you have diversity, and then just make sure that someone is funding the backbone role, because that's the key to keeping the community impact going. So a single actor initiative is simpler. I'm not saying it's simple, but compared to a broad collective impact initiative with single actors, you know what inputs and the outputs are for what you're funding, what outcomes the grant will get, and you can be confident about the success because you define what that success will be. It's not based on it's generally not based on major community level change. And so you can fund a lot of single actor initiatives and show huge numbers of outputs, large outcomes, but you don't really know what other single actors are out there necessarily, or who's funding them, and how unique your outputs and outcomes might be, because you're just focused on your one grant and that success. So funding collective impact is a totally different commitment, and you have to deal with, as a funder, the time is totally different because you're building the trust and the capacity of this group. The trust that you will get to the results and you're getting different change than a single actor initiative would have gotten. The collaboration is very different, and you really have less control over your money in the initial stages. But the results for those funders is seeing the needle move against a major goal, and that's transformative. And you see all the elements of the work, all the local actors, and the different roles, and it's a much more efficient way to fund. Even though you're not getting exactly what you want, you're moving the community along. The other thing is you need to make sure that your bosses are comfortable with funding systems and infrastructure. Otherwise, you won't be able to have that long-term commitment. So most United Ways do fund collective impacts. Most communities have one or more collective impact initiatives going on in them. And as United Ways are community-based funders, they'll get involved in something exciting in their community, especially if it relates to education, income, or health, or whatever that United Way's priorities are. A lot of times these initiatives take the shape of early childhood development or grade level reading. There are many in the US and internationally around workforce development and training, bringing together the job training entities and the employers to make sure that you're training the right skills that people want to hire. Here we have many initiatives called Cradle to Career, where you work with, you ensure student success through all the transitions from preschool to grade school to university to jobs. And that has a lot of range of partners and many different backbones sometimes. Homelessness and housing is a major focus in the US. And then we also address various health issues. These all fall within a typical United Way's focus, and they could be funding many of these within the same community. That's most United Ways. Many, fewer, but many do serve as a backbone role. Some United Ways are the backbone for a major initiative. Others place smaller roles across multiple initiatives because they have capacity for data or communications or just meeting space to gather people together. We see it more often with larger United Ways with more staff capacity, but I have seen some small ones that just found a role that needed to be filled, and they made collective impact happen in a very small community. For United Ways, I've seen the success be best when it's organic. It struggles when United Ways decide they want to be a backbone and act like a backbone when the community may not need a backbone yet. And then it's really hard to fund that position when it's not a demand. But if the community comes together and agrees on a challenge that they want to solve, and they start defining roles and meeting every week or every month, it comes together. And that's when the backbone role seems to be most successful, is when it just naturally happens. Yeah, this gets to the bigger issue of trust. It's one of the biggest challenges of collective impact and why new initiatives take so long to show movement. The local actors have to think about the common goal and their accountability to that goal, not just to their own operations or really to their own grants. They have to share data, they have to collaborate, and they have to learn how to distribute funding amongst each other. And the division of funding will be uneven. It's based on, so it's not the peanut butter, it's based on the role within the initiative, not that organization's need. That'll result in dynamics where, and this is complicated, organizations are fundraising for their own work and for the backbone or the initiative alongside each other. And so the challenge is getting the trust where organizations are telling their story to pay for their operations, but also telling the story of the bigger initiative and the collaborative, knowing that if they do that together, more funding will come in to fund the initiative and bring bigger results that'll help them as well. So it's a big challenge of trust. So that it speaks to the process and the nature of collective impact. So if you're changing systems and changing the message and bringing people together and acting as a network, then it shouldn't affect funding coming in. Collective impact means reviewing what's going wrong and working together and doing continual improvement. And you expect experiments to fail and you want to test things going forward. In the early stages, it can complicate it as you're building trust. If it doesn't seem like someone's doing their job. And if someone's just a terrible actor, then you have to deal with that. But in general, you need open communication and a dedication to that mutual accountability and use the backbone to hold everyone's data, and help all actors see what's going on so that you can adopt that continual improvement approach as you go. So the really cool thing with true collective impact is you just get an amazing story. You've reduced homelessness by 80%, or you've gotten 10,000 children reading at grade level. This makes everyone better, and organizations achieve greater impact than they could on their own. It brings civic pride, and people want to fund things that work. And this outsized impact, people do more than they could on their own. And as you bring in more resources, you can do more things. You can have more trainings and learn new skills than an individual actor could afford, and do more interesting work than a single program would think about doing, because they're focused on a narrow deliverable. So it's hard connecting across systems, but it can lead to deeper innovations. And here in the U.S., I support a group of United Ways that are trying to end homelessness in their community. And it's a major issue. It's getting worse in the U.S. And traditionally, when you deal with homelessness in the U.S., that can mean like running a shelter or running a soup kitchen to make sure people have a place to sleep at night or they can eat. But that just keeps them homeless, but more comfortably homeless. It doesn't end the problem. When funders shift to ending homelessness, that needs collective impact. And they set a common agenda and bring in different sectors. Because once someone's homeless, they're already homeless. So you want to start before that, and you focus on jobs so people can afford a place to live. Mental health, so people receive support and can live with others. Police, so that people have access to opportunity and not jail. And race, looking at who is homeless and why are the rates different. And that's really fascinating work, where you're not just dealing with homeless shelters, you're dealing with all these different sectors and academics and mayors and companies and police departments. And then you learn all these other approaches to the work. And that is a huge incentive that can get people excited about making their community different. And really only collective impact can do that. So I'm really hopeful that more and more funders see the power of collective impact, and more institutions in every community see the value of working together and rethinking their roles.